Sports writer and opinion columnist Jonathan New and Henry Winter of Sports Illustrated. Welcome along to you both. We'll hear from you shortly. Let's just quickly run you through the back pages as we have them. Well, many of them, as you might imagine, focus on events before tonight's Europa League game at Villa Park. Big police presence at Demo. 6 arrested outside Villa Park after away fans found this in The Guardian. Maccabi Tel Aviv fans barred from attending the match on public safety grounds over tensions surrounding the Israel-Palestine conflict. Elsewhere, you can see it there, total recall for Bellingham as Jude gets an England recall from Thomas Tuchel, the squad for the last 2 World Cup qualifiers named on Friday. To the Times, a night of football like no other is the Times take on the events at Villa Park. Elsewhere, a Borough rejects Wolves' move for Rob Edwards. Yes, so Wolves looking for their successor to Vitor Pereira, sacked after 10 Premier League games. The back page of the Eye, back to Aston Villa, who won that game against Maccabi Tel Aviv by 2-0. Their headline, Marlon mauls Maccabi. Striker's penalty seals Europa League win over Tel Aviv for Aston Villa. Looking inside the Telegraph, all change for England as Marcus Smith starts at fullback with Henry Arundel and Henry Pollock on England's bench against Fiji, and indeed Maro Itoje also named amongst the finishers. Welcome once again to Jonathan and to Henry. Let's just start off then with the story that's dominating a lot of the back pages, the Europa League and Aston Villa's win over Maccabi Tel Aviv. But in terms of what was happening off the pitch, Birmingham's safety advisory group announced last month that visiting fans would be barred from attending the match on public safety concerns over tensions surrounding the Israel-Palestine conflict. You can see here a photo of what was happening in the hour or so before kickoff. There were more than 700 police officers deployed to try and make sure that everything did pass off as safely as possible. And as far as we're aware at this point, 6 arrests have been made. It did affect the game. Inevitably it would, because there were no away fans in and they didn't put home fans in the away end at Villa Park. Would have affected the atmosphere. And in terms of the game, it was a 2-0 win for Aston Villa. Let's talk about that then, shall we, chaps? And Villa, doing what they need to do in the circumstances. I guess it was a very professional performance and just getting the win when there were many other things that they could have been distracted by. Henry, how do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't it be nice if we could just spend the evening talking about the class of Konza, the amazing finish from Maatsen and then Marlon's penalty. But obviously, as you've seen from the front pages of the sports sections and the back pages as well, that it's events off the field. I mean, there's some fairly strong reporting, certainly in the Telegraph. I think they call it a night of shame. I imagine if you're sitting in the boardroom at Aston Villa or you're sitting in the control room of West Midlands Police at this moment, as you say, it will be a night of relief. They could probably have done with a little bit more rain to disperse some of the protesters outside, but there has to be sympathy with Villa in all this, the way they've handled it, because they've been dragged into local politics, national politics, international geopolitics, way over my head. And it should just be about football, and football should unite. And unfortunately, the build-up to this game was all about divisions. So I think there'll be a sense of relief tonight, certainly, that so far it seems to have gone off without sort of protests that descended into disorder, which was the fear.
In terms of the game itself, Jonathan, yeah, it was a relatively straightforward 2-0 win. Villa doing great at home. They made 5 changes from the team that lost against Liverpool for this game and still managed to come through relatively easily. How do you see how they're positioned in terms of squad depth and fighting on 3 fronts as remains their 3 competitions this season?
Yeah, I think after a really tough start to the season, they are managing it. Unai Emery particularly is managing it quite well. This was, like Henry says, the sort of game that they would have just wanted to get through, get 3 points and move on. I thought Ian Maatsen played really well. I thought, quite apart from his goal, his great finish, I think he offers Villa something on that left side that maybe Luca Digne doesn't. And, that really surging energy to get into really advanced positions and provide a goal threat, not just in terms of, his creative ability. I thought Jadon Sancho played pretty well as well. I know he gets a huge amount of criticism, but every time he got the ball, something seemed to happen. So yeah, I mean, I know that there's a huge amount of focus, and I think rightly so on what's the geopolitical context of this. A lot of very esteemed sports writers descending on this, quite middle-ranking Europa League tie, and I think it's a good thing that it's passed off without too much incident. And you just have to think, it's probably a good thing that they didn't throw in several thousand far right Maccabi hooligans into the mix.
Yes, and we know that obviously there was concern around protests for both pro-Palestine and pro-Israel around this game, just to mention the balance in the discussion there. Let's change focus now and talk about Jude Bellingham. Obviously, he's been starring for Real Madrid. What a performance against Valencia in La Liga, and of course in the Clásico recently, where he assisted and scored in Real Madrid's win. But is he going to make it back into this England squad? You dare say he's got to? It would be a huge story, Henry, if he were to miss out for a second international break in a row. It sounds by all accounts that Thomas Tuchel is set to recall him. So is that everything sorted then? Tensions resolved?
Well, the main thing is that he's not only back in the squad, but I hope he's back in the team, because, I mean, Johnny and I have been to enough tournaments where we've seen England just lack that little bit of self-belief, that little sort of individual who's going to take a game by the scruff of his neck, as Bellingham did against Slovakia with that extraordinary kick in the round of 16 to keep England in the tournament. When you have a player of Bellingham's quality, who I would put in the top 3-5 that I've seen in too long covering England, you have to play him. Now, the issue around him, I don't buy, it's the shoulder injury, he needed a little bit of time. He played 4 games for Real Madrid before the last England internationals. The suggestion was that he's not a team player. I mean, anyone who watched him at Anfield the other night, and a very poor Real Madrid performance, knows how hard he worked out of possession, covering for Vinicius Junior, who doesn't track back. And he was. And so I think Bellingham is a team player. And look, if he is demanding, let's remember he's only 22. If he is demanding, he's demanding of himself and he's demanding of other players. And that's the type of mentality, as long as it doesn't upset people. And okay, there might be 1 or 2 sensitive types who find Bellingham's demanding nature a little bit too much. But if England are going to get over the line, they're going to need players like Bellingham. And Thomas Tuchel, who, come on, let's appreciate it, as coaches go, he's not exactly a team player. He tends to fall out with players and boardrooms, and because he's a very driven, exceptional, elite coach, and Bellingham is the player's version of that. So ironically, they've actually got quite a lot in common. So coming back to your point, David, I imagine maybe there'll be a little bit of a chat. But this idea that Bellingham's a disruptive influence, when Gareth Southgate, who's a great judge of character, made him one of the 4 team leaders, I think is ridiculous. England are going to need Bellingham against these top teams that they're going to meet in the heat. Bellingham doesn't give the ball away. England are going to need him. So I think it's fantastic that he is back tomorrow. I'll be at Wembley and I'll be applauding Thomas Tuchel. But the next thing is to get him in as a 10. Tuchel loves Morgan Rogers. Obviously, Phil Foden's back in fantastic form. But Jude Bellingham has to be the player who plays off Kane with Gordon and Saka either side.
OK, yeah, I mean, it's a strong, compelling argument you put there, Henry. Another player who's coming back into the international fold after missing the last break is Phil Foden. I wonder, Jonathan, how much do England need Phil Foden as much as, say, Jude Bellingham? And what about, this... You can't fit all these players into these 3 positions behind Harry Kane, because Rodgers, Cole Palmer's out injured right now. Eze, Foden, you go on. But Foden is in excellent form right now.
Yeah, and I think that is the test of a good coach. That's the test of management, to be able to synthesize all these talents and keep them happy and make sure that they're all contributing when they're needed. Obviously, we've seen a few disastrous experiments in the past. Nobody's suggesting that you put all these great attacking players on the pitch at the same time. But a peak Phil Foden, and I think Foden, certainly the last few weeks at Manchester City, has come into a really rich vein of form. Of course, he's an asset to England in a tournament. Of course, Cole Palmer would be if he's fit. And we know that Tuchel already he likes Anthony Gordon on that left. He loves Ebe Eze. and then when you throw in the likes of Bellingham and Madueke when he's fit, Rashford, if he could get into the squad. So you have a huge number of options there, and I think it's a real test of Tuchel and to be able to get all these players in the squad and fit and firing. That's a privilege. That's the privilege of being a manager of a top team with so much attacking talent. I think a lot of coaches in international football are often bemoaning the amount of talent that they have at their disposal. Tuchel, who is a top coach, has a huge array of talent in front of him, and I think the next 18 months or 20 months or whatever are really going to show how he uses that talent.
It's such a good discussion, one that's only going to intensify until he names his squad for the World Cup finals. I'd like to go quick fire with you both now. I'm going to give you two names. I want you to tell me if they're going to make the squad or not, as we stand right now. Trent Alexander-Arnold and Danny Welbeck. Henry?
Oh, I'm not sure either.
Is that your answer? You're going to sit on the fence, squarely on the fence here.
No, not squarely on the fence. I just don't think. I mean, Welbeck. I mean, he's in fantastic form. But what's he? 33, 34. You look at the options. I mean, okay, there's a gap between Kane and Watkins as a number 9. That is an issue. Marcus Rashford probably will travel as the third choice centre forward, and obviously cover for Gordon on the left. Trent Alexander-Arnold. I'm an absolutely huge fan. But England, I would have him in the squad. But Tuchel, he's got James in there. He's got others in there as well. It'd be nice to see Livramento back at some point when he's fully fit. So, yeah, I would love to see Trent Alexander-Arnold in there because of his passing ability, which England will need at some point.
OK, so you were saying probably not Welbeck, maybe Trent, but not sure. OK, Jonathan?
I think Alexander-Arnold gets in because Reece James is probably going to have a fitness issue at some point. Danny Welbeck, I love him as a guy and I love him as a player, but no chance.
OK, great. Thank you very much. Right, we're going to take a little break now, and we're back in a couple of minutes' time. We're going to be looking at more of the sports stories in the morning's newspapers, including this in the Times, as Cristiano Ronaldo pipes up again and he gives Ruben Amorim a problem he could probably do without. We're back in a couple of minutes. You're watching Back Pages tonight. Welcome back to you at home. Welcome back to The Guardian sports writer and opinion columnist Jonathan Yu and Henry Winter of Sports Illustrated. Jonathan, we're going to go to your paper, The Guardian, and talk about the managerial vacancy at Molineux. And we know that Wolves are after Rob Edwards, one of their former players from a good couple of decades ago now. But their first gambit, if you like, has been rebuffed. Middlesbrough say you cannot speak to him. I wonder how you sense things are going to pan out from here, because, Rob Edwards clearly has had some, I'd say, a mixed experience so far, both with Watford and Luton Town, and now back with Middlesbrough. Do you think they will end up getting their man?
I think it's very possible that Rob Edwards is having second thoughts about this. I mean, so look, he's doing a great job with Middlesbrough this season. And if you're a young up and coming manager, which I think he's still got a lot of promise. Who do which club do you think is more likely to give you Premier League football next season? Wolves are bottom. They've got 2 points from 10 games. And not only that, they have a squad that has basically been shedding 2 or 3 top class players every single summer and not really been adequately replacing them. You have an ownership which is barely there. It's being held up by sticks and cushions. And a club that I think has basically been shorn of all ambition. I do really fear for Wolves, not just in the short term, but in the medium term as well. And if you're a manager of promise who is going to get job offers and has already got a club where you're doing well and you're well regarded, what is the upside of taking the leap into what is essentially a sinking Premier League club right now? Wolves, I'm afraid, are and Gary O'Neill, I think may well have seen this as well when he was offered the job or he was linked with the job and turned it down. There is very little upside to Wolves right now. You have an ownership that is showing painfully little ambition. You have a club that is sinking fast. If you look at the squad, I mean, who are the players that you would be excited to work with as a new coach? And if this sounds like really harsh on Wolves, then I think they've been unlucky in some games this season. They have like an incredible fan base who really like truly care about the direction this club is going in. But if you're a young up and coming coach, I don't see where the upside is in going to Wolves right now.
Yeah, they're clearly in a incredible funk right now, aren't they, Wolves? You're just 2 points from those only 10 Premier League games. It's the second season in a row they've failed to win any of their first 10 Premier League games. I mean, that's damning enough. Is Rob Edwards the man to get them out of that funk, Henry? And if not, how much of a coup is it for the EFL, not just Middlesbrough, but for the EFL to keep a manager of his calibre in that division instead of in the Premier League?
Well, I mean, he's an intelligent individual, and I'm sure he'll look at the two situations, look at the two ownerships, as Johnny alludes to, think, well, Steve Gibson at Middlesbrough, I'll have continuity, I'll have some investment in the squad, it will be calm, I'll be able to go about my job without wondering whether the fans are going to have another protest, as they are at Molineux, whether one of my best players is going to be sold. Two of their best players, Cunha and Nori, disappeared in the summer. I mean, as Johnny says, they do have one or two good players, Strand Larsen when he's fit and up to pace, but they need people to get the ball to him. I just think it would be a no-brainer that he stays at Middlesbrough. Maybe there's more money on the table financially in terms of salary at Molineux, but the chances are that they're going to go down. And who will they be waving, slightly mournfully to on the way past? It could well be Middlesbrough. They're third in the Championship. I mean, it's quite competitive at the top there, as it always is in the Championship. But yeah, I mean, your point about the EFL and a coup for them, absolutely. But I think it would just be a coup for common sense if he stayed.
We mentioned before that Aston Villa had beaten Maccabi Tel Aviv in the Europa League. We saw a victory for Crystal Palace as well in the Conference League. In terms of the Scottish sides involved in European football, Celtic and Rangers both on the losing sides tonight, Jonathan. I just wonder, given the situation at both clubs, the fact they've both replaced their manager already this season, is this sort of the worst state that we've seen them in some time?
Well, there's probably some competition for that. I mean, this has happened several times in recent seasons. This does feel like a bit of a, if this isn't the bottom of the barrel, it will do until they reach the bottom of the barrel. I mean, I think we've seen this season in the Scottish Premiership, the rise of Hearts, and obviously, they've done some incredible work there. But I think that has been, I think, a byproduct of the fact that certainly the two Glasgow teams have become just a little bit complacent. I think, if you are Celtic or Rangers, you are looking at the kind of the European landscape and thinking, what is your edge? What is your edge in the market? Where are you finding that? What is your unique selling point? And I think for a long time it was the fact that they played in huge stadiums, they generated lots of revenue, and there was sort of guaranteed league trophies and title challenges in European football every year, and there was you also had a natural springboard to the Premier League. Now I don't think any of those advantages necessarily really work in their favour anymore. It's just as easy to move to the Premier League from a top Belgian club or a Dutch club, for example, or a Portuguese club. The scouting of the scouting edge has completely disappeared because lots of other big European clubs are now shopping in the Scottish market. Serie A clubs and La Liga clubs are looking in Scotland. And then there's the facilities and the infrastructure for players that are coming through. I saw last week the Scottish FA closed 7 of its performance schools because there simply isn't enough talent coming through. Now that should be a huge alarm call, not just for clubs like Celtic and Rangers, but for the whole ecosystem. This is one of the great, in terms of heritage, one of the great footballing countries in Europe, and it's simply not been punching at its weight at a European level for quite some years now.
Another entity they're not punching their weight at a European level for some years now, Manchester United. And in the Times, Henry, Ruben Amorim has been dealing with some criticism from Cristiano Ronaldo, as Cristiano has been chatting with Piers Morgan once again. And he said, we've got to focus on the future rather than dwell on the past, which makes sense, I guess. But Ronaldo also said that there are a number of players who don't have the right mind to be a Manchester United player. Has he got a point?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the interview and I went on Piers' programme last night. Actually, his criticism, it has to be slightly placed into context in terms of the interview was actually done before the recent upsurge in form, relative upsurge in form for Manchester United. But I think that the general tone of Ronaldo's comments about his former club, echoed with his interview with Piers about 2-3 years ago, was the sort of, the issue of leadership, the issue of responsibility taking, the issue of actually putting some money into the training ground, which has actually now been done, which is really important. So yes, there's elements of that, but I think that Amorim is quite clever. I mean, he's Portuguese. It's very unwise to take on Ronaldo. I'm sure he was sort of complimentary about him and moved on. A lot of the noise around Manchester United, and I know we do tend to rotate the noise in the media, but it seems to have moved off Ruben Amorim for now because his strikers are clicking. The lack of pace and mobility in midfield is obviously an issue, but with Cunha dropping back in there, they seem to have sort of worked out an element of way of dealing with that. Matthias de Ligt's been playing well. They've got a sensible goalkeeper who can come for a ball and hold it, as well as stopping shots and distributing the ball to the right person. So I think there's been a bit of calm around there. So I think Ronaldo will just be a passing squall rather than a storm.
Okay, let's finish off on Mary Earps. This is obviously a story that's just emerged in the last couple of weeks or so with her book. Jonathan, you've got a fresh take on it. Maybe you could just explain briefly what your piece is about.
Yeah, I mean, we could probably spend a whole half hour on this. I mean, like we're going to add to the discourse. I think I'm not going to defend what Mary Earps has done or said. In our newspaper, she's a grown woman. She could advocate for herself. I just think that there is something about the stars and the level of fame that women's football creates. It's this huge blast of fame where people are elevated from relative obscurity to huge public profile in a very short space of time. And the fact that women's football fandom is to a far greater extent than the men's game, it's based on public image, it's based on personal brand, and it's based on almost a kind of devotional aspect of fandom, which is quite akin to pop music or the way we follow reality TV. So I think the Earps situation has come about from a culture in which female football players are expected to sell themselves and keep selling themselves. Almost as much as they can and try and cash in on the fleeting moments when their sport has a huge public profile, and so again, not to defend anything that she's done, but I think that's where this controversy has come from, where players are kind of expected to sell more of themselves than maybe they really wanted to or originally were expecting to. Just really brief, about 30 seconds, any comment on this, Henry?
Well, the one thing I don't buy is that some of the headlines I've seen that the sort of the PR and around the book hasn't done her any favours. She would have known exactly what was in that book. I've written enough books with players and they go through it with a fine tooth comb, they or their agent. So I don't think there was anything in there that she wasn't absolutely aware about. But I think Hannah Hampton, I think she's probably just looking at a trophy cabinet and thinking that she's in the lead at the moment. She doesn't really need to respond that much.
Yeah. OK. Well, thank you very much indeed for your company and your insights this evening, Jonathan and Henry. We'll call it a day there. If you missed any of the show, another chance to see Back Pages tonight at 1:30. It's also available as a podcast. Just download Back Pages on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your pods. Join us again on Friday. Our guests will be Martin Hardy and Ian Ladyman. On the way next, more